This is the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, hosted by me, Kelly Donnie Upiro. This show is for growing insurance agencies looking to maximize their biggest investment, their people. Listen to the top agency performance partners clients share their story on how they boosted their performance by executing a plan. Let's head to the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Podcast, and I am your host today, Heath. We are sitting here with Justin Goodman having a conversation about hiring to go along with our Q1 course. Justin, you want to say hi to the audience for a minute?
How's it going? Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. And, as Kelly and I were preparing for this course and getting it ready, that's one of the things that we brought up was, talking about when you're hiring, there's so much that goes into hiring more than just, we're going to put a posting out there and see what happens. It's not like the old days. We just stick an ad in a newspaper and see what happens. And those who don't know what a newspaper is, it's that little paper that comes in black and white and it comes to your front door. Those who don't get the mail anymore or don't get it by mail. But, it's a little different now. And so we were thinking about different resources and ways that you could, enhance the hiring process. And Total CSR came up, and Justin Goodman is founder, owner of and creator of Total CSR. Justin, why don't you tell us your background a little bit, who you are, where you come from, how you got to this place, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, third generation in the insurance business. When I was 18, my old man said, hey, he had a retail and a wholesale operation, said, if you're not going to come in this business, I'm going to sell it. And I had heard enough insurance stories over the year to realize this is not what I wanted to do. So I said, sell the company. And so he did. He sold it to a large public company. But then I was selling shipping supplies a few years later, and then met a girl and realized recurring commissions would be a better lifestyle choice. So begged for a job, got a job as a producer there. Ultimately, he transitioned out. I took over running the construction division and found myself really interested in the operations side. So did the sales, was very successful there, but I love the operations side. So I led for the company several initiatives. One was we developed the first outsourcing program probably ever in insurance. So I was the team working with India and developing that. Alongside with that, we developed the first small business units. So that was also my baby. So I have lots of operational expertise, and that's where I love to play. Long story short, a few years into it, it's now 2008. The company I'm with says we don't want to pay commission on accounts less than $10,000 in revenue, which was a lot of my book of business. So I had become close with the CEO of this company over time. And I said, this isn't going to work. This is going to eat up most of my comp. And they didn't really want our business anyway. So he said, how about you buy it back? You can spin it off and go your own way. So my business partner, I did that. We bought our business back. We did all construction, and 2008 happened. Everything got cut in half overnight. But then we rebuilt our agency. And really where Total CSR was born from was my need to train people pretty quickly, because I couldn't afford to pay for senior people. And yet I needed specialist expertise in a niche that a lot of people don't like construction because of the nature of the customers and the workload attached to it. So I had to train people. I train people like my father does, like I want them to take over the business. Well, millennials, you can't count on them for a 10-year career path. They want to experience different things, which is totally fine. So my 6 months of training them and spending all that time didn't really work. What the local, regional, larger companies realized is I had a great training program. And so they'd go and poach that employee of mine and offer them a 30% raise because they were fully trained and could execute on the job. Long story short, we ended up building an online course for our own agency. Other agencies were finding out about what we did. We said, hey, this is a great idea. We should really get serious about it. I hired the head of e-learning from Toastmasters International, and we built out Total CSR, which really focuses on the practical side of the business. And we've been doing that for the past 3 years, and that brings me to today.
Wow. Okay. There's so many things in there that we hear and that so many agencies talk about on a regular basis, especially you spend all the time training and getting to know, and working with those people just to have them leave or to get poached or to have something happen. That happens all the time. And so, that's, kind of where the birth of Total CSR came from. And I'd be interested. Okay. So when you first came up with Total CSR, just out of my own curiosity, why go with that, that focus of the CSR, not total agency or total producer or total manager, or why the CSR route was where you started there?
So if we're talking, are you talking the reason we named it that, or the reason?
Yeah. We'll just start there.
Okay. So we named it that because we only thought we would be training CSRs. We had a limited vision for what it was. I thought I was only going to teach commercial lines. And so we just chose that name. It was long after we built this company now, a mistake to do that, but the branding is such that to change it would just not be a helpful thing for us. So that's how we came up with the name, try to keep it very simple and straightforward to what we do. We also get confused with being an outsourcing company. So needless to say, that's how we came up with the name. The reason we chose focus on CSRs is that's 90 to 95% of the employees in our business nationwide. So that's who needs the most help. If we were just focused on producers, then that's such a small percentage of the population. And if I'm candid about my background, I was a great producer because I sold expertise and I set mousetraps for the other producers, but I am not a prototypical producer. And while I can play in that area, I didn't feel best equipped to lead with that as far as a training program. As I mentioned before, my real expertise is that operational excellence and building systems.
Okay. So I think that you bring up some things, as you were talking earlier, and you're right. And most of the agencies that we talk to on a regular basis are always looking for, and that's something that we talk about, is that forever recruiting. Mm-hmm. And we talk about having that as a part of your plan, because you never know when you're going to need somebody, or you never know when, Susie's husband's going to get another job somewhere, or Sally hits the lottery and wins $1 million, or something like that, or maybe we move them within the company to, elevate them. And so that seems to be an issue that I'm sure you've run into as well as you're talking to agencies or you're running your own agency.
Yeah.
So I think it's crucial. We talk about the forever recruiting and what that means for them. And so with the customer service rep and the account manager role being so vital to so many agencies, what types of things, as you've been doing this for a little while now, what types of issues do you run into the most, or what types of training do most people come to you for, or do you guys feel like you're tackling?
So most people come to us because they can't find experienced talent, or they don't have the budget. It doesn't financially make sense. For example, an account executive, if you need them to handle a $400,000 commission revenue book of business, you can't afford to pay them what a market's demanding at $150 a year in salary, depending on what market you're in. And so they said, I need that role filled, but I've got to bring someone new to industry. Well, the heavy lifting to train someone new to industry is significant. So the industry does a poor job, and even with their poor job, it still takes them 2 years to get it done. They come to us because our track record is we can get it done in 6 weeks. And so they're able to do it much faster, much more effectively, and it doesn't require the human capital on their part to get the person off the ground. So they don't need to hire someone because they have ample staff. They need to hire someone because they have too much work on their plates. And so they don't have the time to train. They don't have a background in training. And that's really the reason they approach us.
Yeah. Prior to our conversation here on the podcast, we were talking about, and you mentioned it a minute ago with millennials, when we talk about, because in our industry, we have the old adage of pale, male, and stale, and it's so often brought up. And, we talked about, and one of the things I agreed with you on, we were talking about was this, one of the needs for this and why we have such a hard time with different generations getting involved in, for example, with Gen Zs and some of the younger generation coming in, all they've heard about is how things are done at, the old days, or how the captives are treating CSRs or account managers to say they don't appreciate me or they don't do this or that. Talk to me about, your thoughts on that. And, we had this great conversation before we got on. I'd love to hear some more about that.
So the problem is the branding, the messaging that they've gotten from their counterparts. So I think I mentioned to you before, only 1% millennials and Gen Z, if we're generous, 2% have an interest in insurance at all. We'll even consider it. So you've got the tightest labor market in history. And of that market, only 1% of them is interested. Well, that 1% who might be interested has heard stories. The only reason they're interested is because someone talked to them about insurance, because that's the only way you typically find out about it. But then they hear the negative, or they see the commercials of State Farm and think that's what it's all about. So when they hear, if I'm a servicing role, I can become an account manager, but there's really, if I'm working for the average agency with 10 or less people, I start off as an assistant, I become an account manager, and maybe they change my title to account executive, but I do the same exact thing. And that's as far as I can climb. Well, millennials and Gen Z want to have a corporate ladder, not just a rung on a ladder. So they want to try different things. They don't have that opportunity. Additionally, as you know, producers historically have not treated account managers as such a valuable part of the team. That's generally been the experience from my anecdotal data working with 2,000 agencies, what I hear. So when you have that, and when you have two classes of citizens, a producer can behave badly, a producer can say negative things to women in a lot of these organizations, slap on a risk because the agency doesn't want to lose $1 million commission revenue book of business. The account manager creates an issue, and they view largely her disposable because she doesn't control in their mind the book of business. And so that negative messaging gets all the way out. And so then we drill down to, well, even if they are going to look at agencies, what's your agency's specific reputation? And even how do you get that word out? So you have such a small amount of people, candidates available that are even out there, and you're competing for it. So that's the challenge, I think, facing our industry.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've been in this industry for over 20 years, second generation. I know you said third. And for you, I think it's the greatest industry in the world. And I think that it's incredible, based, solely, if you just base it solely on the revenue you get from retention, that's incredible. You sell a couch, you get that couch, you don't see them again for 10 years. Sell a car in the next 2 years, whatever, 5 years. With insurance, you're going to see those people every year, and you're going to be able to talk to them throughout the year, build a relationship with them. So I don't understand, and that's something I'll preach with mountaintops of why people don't want to get into our industry. And so you brought up some really good points there. And as we're talking through this course about hiring and attracting talent to our industry and to your agency specifically, that's something I feel like is a big hurdle that people need to get over already. So what are some tips you might have, or some things that you did within your own agency when you were doing that and operational stuff, how to attract those people, whether they're younger, older, whatnot? What are some of the things that you did?
So, and this is self-serving, but they need to know there's an onboarding and training program that someone's going to walk them through the process, because already the messaging to them has been is you're just thrown into the fire and you're going to have to figure it out.
Right.
That doesn't make people who are wary about our industry, all eager to get out there. The other thing is we have been looking at the same pool of potential employees for a very long time.
A long, long time. Yeah.
Most agencies of any size require a college degree. Why? Because that's what was always done.
That's the way it's always been done. I hate that phrase. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
So that's the way it's always been done. And I can tell you, as a kid who went to college and had his parents fund it, I didn't learn a heck of a lot in college. I learned nothing that was applicable to the insurance space. So if we're just looking at them, we further limit our pool. So we have to get involved, whether at the community level, the high school level, to make sure that people know that we're not just looking for a college degree person. That won't be a ceiling for you, that you don't have a degree. But also you have to look at, your competitors. When you do the job postings, right? Most people, they'll come up with their own job posting, they'll wing it. They don't specifically describe what the role is. They don't describe what the career path is. And they don't look at what their competitors are doing, what the offerings are there. So you have to make sure it's attractive enough, as compared to everyone that's in your marketplace looking for the same person. The other component that we see that's been really effective is finding a way to increase the social media outreach, whether it be community projects, whether it just being offering training opportunities or things that aren't even insurance related for people in the community. You create those opportunities. They're coming in for some other type of training, but they're going into an agency and going, oh, this is a business, this is a career path, and look, they're doing unique things in that space. So there's a lot of different ways and carrots you can stick out there that serve as those breadcrumbs that bring them into your office. But you have to be deliberate, and it's a long game. It's not, one social media post or one training. It's building your reputation there, which then goes back to you have to be what you say you are. And if you're not, then you got to start there, which makes it even a longer haul to get to where you are.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. You brought up several good points in there, but I'm going to, try to work my way backwards from what you just said, because the way my brain works. But I think it's a good point of, having that culture in your agency. And part of the course we're talking about for Q1 is, not only hiring, but also retaining your employees. And I think if you've got a good culture and you've got a place where people want to come to work, and you've got an industry, that it's so vast in what we do. We don't do the same thing every day in a lot of ways. But I think if you can make it a way where people want to work, your employees you have now, your current employees are going to talk, and they're going to try to recruit for you and bring their friends. Hey, you should come work for the Goodman agency or the Sharon agency or APP, because it's so much fun to work here and things are so great here. So I think you brought up a good point in bringing up that to say you want to, do what you say you're going to do and have a place where people want to come to work.
Yeah. And, and the other part of that is it's not just, hey, it's a fun place to work or it's a good culture. It's what the values are. So specific to my agency.
Yeah.
I have always valued family above anything else. It's what I preach to everybody, and we live it out here. When my employees have family events, because I have working moms, I have working dads, they will go to their kids' events, even if they're in the middle of the day. I will not allow them to book end of the day doctor's appointments, because that's bad for them. You're going to be stuck in the office for 2 hours. I want them to choose a time that's convenient for their kid when they know they're going to be best served. And everybody knows when these things are happening that we're jumping into cover for this person. So that's the culture. I'm going to go to my kids' games. They're going to go to their kids' games. And that's something that's valuable to them. Even if the work was boring, finding a job that pays well and puts a focus on family and lives that out is another thing. So you got to hit the various value sets. And then you want to attract the talent that values who you actually are. If you're not that way, then don't spend your time trying to attract people that aren't that way, because they'll either disrupt your culture or leave very quickly.
No, that's good. That's really good. Another thing we talked about, and, we're going to talk to the independent agents because that's who we know most work. It's probably who you work with the most. When you talk about that and you talk about bringing in a CSR account manager, even, front desk staff or, director of first impressions, whatever you want to call them, it's not like working anywhere else in the world because being an independent agent, you've got, let's say, 5 different companies you use on a regular basis. That's 5 different logins, 5 different appetites, 5 different things to navigate through, 5 payment systems. You can keep on going down this road without fear of being redundant. And so there's so much to learn there. There's so much to bring in, and that could be overwhelming if you don't sell it right.
It's overwhelming, and it's something that's not taught, and it goes back to that training. Regardless of how you do it, every single process needs to be written out and also in video form, and you need to have your best person writing this out, not the person who has the available time or the person who's eager to do it, because they're probably not the best individual for the job. So you got to tackle each of those issues because there are so many variables.
Yep.
and make that a priority. And then in the interview process, because now it's not just they're interviewing with you, they're interviewing with 3 other firms. You have to sit down with them and say, this is our training program. This is our vision for you. By the way, even if you don't want to play here, so I'll just give an example. My team knows that if they graduate on past me, because I'm one of those who has a corporate rung on the ladder, I still have my agency. I don't have 5 layers of middle management. If they decide they don't want to do construction insurance anymore, or they've outgrown and they want to do something that I don't necessarily have a job opening for, I'm going to advocate for them. I'm going to utilize my network to get them their next opportunity. And they know that I'm not going to hold them hostage. In turn, what happens, and we've had this, I had a gal who's going to move out of state. We got 3 months notice that this was going to happen. And the agreement was that we had this. If she got a job sooner than that, we talked to the agency owner and try and accommodate for our path, and making sure we are okay. But if we found someone ahead of time, we were going to compensate her for that full term that she gave us notice. And so that she had that time frame. So knowing that, the dynamic is totally different. And what usually happens is that person then is around to help train the new person versus just bailing with 2 weeks notice. And you then have a situation where you go, I can train so fast. If I can train someone in 6 to 8 weeks, I just can rely on getting A players. Even if they only last 2 years with me, I got an A player 2 years versus a C player for 10.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I love the old, the saying of, the only thing worse than not training your employee. The only thing worse than training your employees and them leaving is not training your employees and them staying.
Yep.
And I love that. And I think, sorry, it took me a minute to get through that. But that's one of those things I find, fascinating. You've got to make sure you train them properly. And like you said a minute ago, there's a lot that goes into that. And so I'm interested to know, I know you guys do some interesting things when it comes to onboarding and hiring new staff. And, one of the things as we're going through this course, I'd love to have you kind of share a little bit. One of the things you talked about prior to us hitting record button was assessments that you guys do. And those that have worked with Total CSR, you're probably very familiar with these, but those who have never worked with Total CSR, like myself, I'm interested to know more about some of these assessments and how you came to this idea, and kind of walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah. So the reason we started the assessment process is our success rate is through the roof when agencies have hired the right candidates. But we have 2,000 agencies, 50 of the top 100 brokers in the world use us, which has a higher level of sophistication, a higher level of data than a bunch of the smaller agencies have. And they said, we don't hire correctly. We don't do it right. So we've got churn there. And so what they finally figured out is, we need you to help us hire the right person so that we can have that person and they'll have success in your program. And what a lot of them found was, there's good systems out there, right? There's Omnia out there. There's one tied to the big I out there that's there. There's, a number of them out there. They're all good, right? They're all good.
Yeah, there's the DISC, there's the Enneagram, there's the ideal traits. There's all of them. They're all good.
Yeah. And DISC is great. I like that one a lot. The problem with a lot of these are that they charge on a transactional basis. And so, as I mentioned to you before, one of the problems is then you're only assessing people after they get through a certain stage in your program. And so for us, we offer unlimited assessments. We want you to assess all your staff. We want you, any interns you hire, any prospective person that applies for the job, assess them, because even if you don't make them past the process right now, you've got them in a bank for later. So you do those assessments. So what we ended up doing for Total CSRs, we built out a start to finish hiring, assessing, and training system. So it starts with a job posting. We integrate with ZipRecruiter and Indeed, and the job is posted. When the person applies for the job, they're given assessments. So we assess for aptitude, personality, and emotional IQ. They get those results, get ported into our system, and then we have a full-on applicant tracking system. And one of the challenges most agencies said is, even in the phone screening process, we're winging it. We don't know the questions to ask. So we have best-in-class questions to ask. Then when they move past that, it's interview questions. Well, how do you ferret out whether the person was lying on the assessments, right? Because smart people can game the assessments. And so we have custom questions based upon their answers that serve to vet that out further. Is it perfect? No, but it's a lot better than an agency just winging it. Now, if you have an experienced person, and as I mentioned to you in our previous discussion, you've got to pay them a lot more than you ever did before. Well, you can't afford to make a mistake there. And if you make a mistake there, then you're going to set your entire agency back. So you have to be able to know that they've got the coverage knowledge to do the job, but also can actually transact and do the job.
So is it almost like a BS meter for those people that are experienced?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people, and you know this, that have 20 years in the business, but only 5 years of experience as far as knowledge.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think we see that far too often. So your assessment measures their skills, capabilities, abilities, what they know in the job performance that they're in.
Yeah. So the coverage knowledge, and can they do certain things, and what lines of coverage they're competent in and what they're weak in. So let's say
that's another thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's another thing. You can have all the knowledge you want, but knowing how to put that into play is a totally different ballgame.
Yeah. And it also is important to know where, on what coverage line they may not be able to transact as well, because it could be irrelevant. So for example, let's say, or less relevant, in Texas, workers' compensation is optional. So they may not need to be an expert in this. So if they're lights out everywhere else, but weak in workers' compensation, well, we can train them up on that, but they're not going to interact a tremendous amount depending on their client base. So it's not necessarily a deal killer for them. Whereas if you're testing on professional lines and they have no expertise and all you do is professional lines, well, then you got to get that candidate out of there.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I love that you get into that. And, I'm over here taking notes myself. So, so you've got different assessments based upon different job performances, I'm guessing. And we talked about beforehand, you identified, 3 different levels for that. Do you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So different assessment platforms get a bit more granular. Our data shows that it's not really necessary. A service role is a service role. A production role is a production role. A managerial role is a managerial role. What's more important into that is actually benchmarking against your existing staff. So I've had my top performer ever that I had did not necessarily match the customer service role 100%. But what we did know is she was amazing. So every candidate, we benchmarked against her specific results. And so I knew if the aptitude was there and that personality lined up there, then I had a winning ticket. And so that was far more important than slotting customer service into 5 different, whether it's a high level, low level, et cetera.
Yeah, we call, we're reading a book right now called Traction and EOS, if you've read any of that, but it's putting people in the right seats.
Yep.
You can have the right person in the wrong seat or the wrong person in the right seat. And so, you talk about that right there, just using different terminology. But yeah, I think that you can have an incredible employee just having the wrong seat, and then you're going to end up putting them in a position where they're not going to be as successful.
Yep.
And, it's good to hear that. So you identified sales, service, and management. So do you have, assessments for sales staff as well and management staff, or only for the CSRs?
We have assessments for each. And the sales one, measures, again, I think every assessment software claims to be the best. I think ours is the best, but by best, it's probably 2% better than the competition, right? We're all within the margin of error. And it's really about how the agency leverages it. But yes, for producers, we're measuring not just their ability to connect, build rapport, but what their call reluctance is. Are they going to dial? Are they not going to dial? Are they going to be bold enough to ask for a referral? Or are they going to sit and be an order taker? From a managerial perspective, where are their strengths, weaknesses? What's their confrontation style? And then all of them, they all take the same emotional IQ test because, again, we need to be able to read people. But for the personality side, it's all slotted based upon the specific type of work they're doing.
Okay, cool. And I like that, another thing that you brought up, and I would be interested in hearing some more about this. If, let's say they've gone through your courses and these are all specific courses they've already designed and they're not going to fit my agency. Mm-hmm. You guys have done something pretty unique there too that you can help agencies with if they don't want to use a prepackaged course, correct?
Well, so
you can create your own, right?
They all need to go through our coursework,
right? But I mean that you do have custom.
Past that, yes. So we have the ability. Let's say they only are weak in 2 areas. They can just take those courses. But past that, every agency uses agency management systems, uses different carriers and online raters differently. Right. And they're formatted in various methodologies. So we have the ability to, via very simple, very easy to use tools, to build out your own course with video, with quizzes, with interactions, so that you can do a better job specifically tying the training to your agency. And one of the things I didn't mention was we did a study on just how effective job shadowing was. The first time I watch a process and I'm sitting behind somebody explaining it, I retained 15%. Second time, about 30%. Third time, 60%. Well, that means I, the trainer, I'm going to waste 3 times going through it. And that's if I have a best in practice person doing it. And then we go, how many questions do they have afterwards? So it's far better for them to watch a video, answer questions on a quiz, and see that 3 or 4 times through, and then sit with a live body, because their retention rate is going to be darn near 90% that first time. And if they get lost, they just go back to the video. So that's another reason to have that custom coursework in there.
Yeah, I like that. And I didn't mean that they shouldn't take your course or they shouldn't go through what Kelly and I do as well. I also, I just think that's really neat that you've created a way for them, because they might say, it looks like you've just taken every hurdle and taken it away from them. I don't know how to do the video. Oh, we got that for you. I don't know how to build the course stuff. Oh, we got that for you. I don't know how to do this. Oh, we can take that. That's really cool that you guys have done that, Justin. I think that's neat. And one of the things you brought up, and you and I both, know this, and people listening know this, each agency is unique. Each agency is different. And you've got, and we work with, and you work with agencies from, one man show all the way up to, as you talked about, top 10 brokers in the country, and large agencies. What are let's start here. What are the similarities in hiring between whether they're small or large? And what are some of the vast differences that you see there? And what are some of the challenges you see in both?
So the similarity is that whether they're small or large, even if they have tools in place, the people doing the hiring typically aren't trained in how to do it well. I'm an agency. So let's take a large organization that has 200 offices. I'm the locations agency president. So my job is to hire. Well, I may not have been trained in that. I may not have had an HR professional walk me through. So even though I have the tools, I don't know how to use them. That runs from small agencies to large agencies that we see all the time. The difference between the largest agencies and the smaller agencies is the larger agencies tend to have internship programs, which are better feeder programs.
Yeah, you can graduate them up. Yeah.
But they also struggle because there's so many hurdles in place. And something that some people think is controversial to talk about, but I think is worth noting, is like you've mentioned, the industry is largely white males and does not have a large minority contingent.
We could just call a spade a spade.
Yeah, it's what it is. But the scary thing is those large organizations, the data shows that they get a larger pool of candidates, but if you're a minority, you are disproportionately by, I think, 3 times not to make it through the phone screening process. And so large organizations, while they get a large applicant pool, are eliminating those just based upon their experience. Maybe they sound different. Maybe they realize the background's a bit different. Who knows? And immediately they eliminate those people. Well, that's the big challenge that I see for the large organizations. They've got so many hurdles in place. And the first hurdle is eliminating opportunity for someone who probably is really qualified for the job. But whether it's inherent bias or you name the reason, data is just showing a lot of them aren't making it through the system. Whereas if I'm local in a small agency and I have fewer steps in the process, I'm getting them in and I'm getting to know them a bit better. And so my success rate is higher there amongst minorities.
Sure. Wow. I did not know some of those things. That's crazy. So dealing with the smaller agencies that we talked about, they're all, coming to us, or they're all going to their local associations or their national associations, and they're all saying the same thing. We're looking for people. And one of the things that I talk about with agencies is looking in unique spots, looking in different places besides other agencies or Indeed or something like that, and maybe get creative on some of that. What are your thoughts on some of that? What do you think? What are you advising people on if they come to you and ask you where to find people?
So my best employees actually come from Starbucks.
Oh, that's awesome. Mine's Chick-fil-A when I tell people, but
Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, In-N-Out. You will find college-age students that are looking for careers. They have the social skills. They can handle stress. They can multitask. That's a great place to look. But that's ultimately, it's within the community. You all know company owners, and they may not want their kid going in their business. They may want that kid to have experience somewhere else for a couple of years. Yep. And so offering internships to their kids is a value add. You will get a percentage of those to convert. Going to your local community college and saying, you know what, we want to, and you go to, and I'll just take a minority group, right? You choose an African American group within the school, a Mexican American school, an LGBTQ group in the school, and you reach out and say, we're going to offer this type of training program, doesn't have to be insurance related, free of charge, come to our office, and by the way, we're going to teach on job skills training, whatever it is, the interview process, you build that. Now, all of a sudden, people who, again, would never have known of you are seeing you and getting an experience. And then you might say, okay, well, you're still in college, you want an internship, right? So then I go back to the internship process. It's a great way if you can give them the skills to do and things to practice on. They'll see if they like it or not. And it's a much better alternative than hiring them and finding out 2 months later they don't like the job. But those are some very simple things you can do to get people in the door to at least interview with you.
Yeah, I've spoken to many college groups over the years, and I think that's a great avenue. I love that you brought up, starting even younger in high school. And there's several high school programs I've been a part of as well through some associations and organizations I'm a part of. And I think that's crucial as well and vital to get them in and teach them those kind of things, finance, insurance, things like that at a young age. Because a lot of kids, I know my own kids and your own kids, we've talked about, they're in high school. They don't know the first thing about it. Maybe our kids do, but their friends don't know the first thing about finances and insurance and whatnot because they don't teach that at school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so one of those things that I thought that was interesting. I'm glad you said that. As we're wrapping up a little bit, training, obviously is a huge part of it. We've talked about the hiring. We've talked a little bit about retaining with culture and whatnot, and we've gotten into some of the training too. What are some other things you might, as we wrap up, leave us with when it comes to once you've got them past the 90 days, whatever that probationary period you've got, we treat, a 30 or 90 day training or 90 day probationary period, so to speak. Once you get beyond that, what's some advice you can give on that for training and keeping employees?
So from a training perspective, they've got to retain the information. So you can't just set it and forget it. You've got to be assessing quarterly, giving them additional coursework to do. So for example, we have set coursework, but they can graduate on past that and tackle new things. I have a great working relationship with the institutes, and they've got really awesome coverage training program. And so you can recommend them to go that direction as well. There's lots of educational stuff that can be done. But past that, the way you keep them engaged is really how you and retained is how you would do with the rest of your staff. You actually have to show up and interact with them, show that you care. And so, for example, my staff, I meet with every individual once a month, and we have a one-on-one meeting, and I have a set format where I'm checking in with them personally, asking specific questions so I get a feel for what's going well, what's not going well. And then they can ask me any question about the business. So I'm fully transparent with the financials, everything else, and we have a dialogue. So what happens is if I have a problem, there's no back office gossip because they come straight to me. They feel like they're inside valued and they can provide ideas. And so that's a great way to do it, whether it's the team lunches or even if you ask how many agency owners come in. And so for me, I'm in the office by 6 a.m. every day before anyone gets there, but I have my door closed a lot of the time. Am I taking the time to walk over and at least having a 1-minute conversation with each employee, not about what transactionally needs to be done, but how's your morning going? How's Jimmy doing? Those type of things. It's not overly complex, but it's difficult because life gets in the way and we find reasons why we can't do it. Those are the simple things, and they don't really cost you anything to do other than your time. And then if you say, well, my time's very valuable, well, let's add up the time it would take you over the course of a year, and then let's take a look at the cost of trying to hire somebody new, which is the average salary a year. You will find, even if you said you were worth $700 an hour, you're going to come out ahead by doing some of these simple things. You're muted.
realize that I was, blowing my nose earlier. I didn't want anybody to hear it. So, but no, I appreciate you, Justin. I appreciate you coming in, hanging out with us. I appreciate you being a part of the Q1 course and doing this podcast with us. And I really do. I feel like, this is a big part of agencies that it's good to get back to and talking about the hiring and the onboarding and the retaining of your staff. And so I'm glad to have this relationship with Total CSR. And if people want to reach out to you or want to learn more about Total CSR, can you give some contact information, how they can find you, maybe a web address, something to that effect?
Yeah, the best way to reach out is to go to our website, totalcsr.com. We not only explain everything we do and show what we do on the website, but we do live demos. So it's a one-on-one agency demo. You talk about your specific problems, and it is not a sales pitch. All of our pricing is on our website. So the whole idea is we're trying to show you the product, make sure you understand if we're a fit or not for your agency, and so they can get over a 30-minute demo, a real handle of whether or not we're going to be a fit for them. So the best thing is go to the website. If you have further interest, book a demo and take a look at the product.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think everyone should do that. We appreciate Total CSR and what you guys bring to the industry with your expertise, especially coming from, if you guys didn't hear that, Justin is not just, the owner of Total CSR. He actually has an agency. He's in the trenches every day. He does this thing. He's involved in the hiring and the training of his own employees. And so this guy's one that does what he says. So, again, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you guys listening. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir.